Hey everybody, and welcome to Bits of Board, where we're talking board games, miniatures, cards, and dice. My name's Michael, and today I'm very proud to show off the latest creation from Simply Elegant Games, Anzac Day, a card game which will have 2 to 5 players drafting and placing cards in a timeline which will at the end of the day represent how a player has spent their Anzac Day holiday. Now, for those that don't know, Anzac Day is a day of remembrance in Australia and New Zealand that broadly commemorates all Australians and New Zealanders who served and died in all wars, conflicts, and peacekeeping operations, and the contribution and suffering of all those who have served. It's a day filled with activities both traditional and non-traditional, and Anzac Day, the card game, aims to capture these through a card drafting, tableau building game for the whole family. Over the course of the game, players will draft cards and spend cards to place others in their tableau. A player's tableau is made up of a single timeline of cards, each card adjacent to the next. The first 6 cards played represent the first half of the day, and those placed after represent the latter half. The winner of Anzac Day is determined by the number of points scored by a player's cards come the end of the game. Cards can score points in 3 ways. First, they're worth a number of points as detailed in their description. Second, they are worth 1 point for every 2 medals in a tableau. And finally, depending on the objectives present, cards will contribute even more points. With objectives, players will be awarded points, generally for having the most of a particular type of card in play. However, some will double down on points already offered. A game of Anzac Day is played until the end of a round where one player has placed 12 or more cards in their tableau. Then one final round is played before the game is scored. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at gameplay in detail. Setup is a breeze. Firstly, shuffle all of the playable cards, then deal 5 out to each player. Next, draw a number of cards from the draw deck to form the central pool. Here we draw 2 per player, plus an additional 2. These are the cards available to players to draft from each round, with a new selection being available each time. 3 objective cards will be drawn from the objective deck, these forming the public objectives available to all players. Finally, 2 objective cards are dealt face down to each player, of which players will choose 1 to keep. The start player token should be given to the player whose birthday is closest to Anzac Day itself, April 25th. And with that, we're ready to play. Each round of Anzac Day is split into 2 phases, the drafting phase and the play phase. First, the draft. As you saw, players begin the game with 5 randomly drawn cards, but each round in the draft phase, players will be able to supplement their hand, taking cards from the central pool. During the drafting phase, players will first, in turn order, choose a card to take into their hand, and then once all players have taken their first card, they will do the same again, except this time in reverse player order. This will leave 2 cards left in the pool no matter what the player count, both of which being removed to the discard pile. Once the drafting phase is over, players will, beginning with the start player and moving clockwise, will take turns placing cards into their tableau. First, the active player must discard a card from their hand, then may place anywhere from 1 to 3 cards from their hand into their tableau. Cards are added to a tableau in a line from the leftmost position onwards, with cards once placed being locked in position unless a played card says otherwise. Once all players have placed their chosen selection, the central pool of cards is replenished. The start player marker moves to the player on its left, and a new round begins with a new drafting phase. The game continues until endgame is signalled with a player having placed 12 or more cards in their tableau. 1 more round is played, and then the game is scored. Players should first count the points as listed on their timeline. Next, points for the public objectives, points for the private objective, and then finally points based on the number of medals in their tableau, 1 point for every 2 present. The winner is the player with the most points, with the tiebreaker coming down to the player with the most medals in their timeline. So that is gameplay. Let's take a look at the different cards. Anzac Day's draw deck is made up of 19 different cards representing the different activities a player can undertake to fill their day. Traditional Anzac activities award victory points, while non-traditional Anzac activities grant players special abilities a player can use to make the best of what they've been dealt. The first 3, last post, lay a wreath, and bake Anzac biscuits, are all worth 1 point each. Now, these cards aren't worth very much on their own, but if they're placed in a player's timeline next to one of the following cards, their value increases. Or more precisely, the value of the card next to them increases. 1 minute's silence goes from being worth 0 points to 3 points when played next to the last post. That is, it sits to its left or its right. Make a wreath goes up to 3 points as well, and same with Eat Anzac biscuits. These 3 cards are a lot rarer than their powering counterparts, but they do the job. Shake a Veteran's Hand and Flag Ceremony are both worth 2 points apiece, with Shake a Veteran's Hand accounting a medal to endgame scoring. Playing a single 2-up card grants a player 3 points, with the card's value diminishing for every other one placed, and this is anywhere in the timeline. March works the opposite to 2-up, with 1 card being worth 1 point, 2 cards 3 points, and 3 or more cards 5 points in total. Drink to Fallen Heroes is a card that can only be played in the second half of the timeline, that is, after the first 6 cards have been placed. These cards are worth 1 point each, so long as there are 4 or less in the timeline. Playing a Nap card allows a player to discard and redraw any number of cards in that player's hand. Day Trip is a card that can be replaced during the play phase, making it a very good card to play next to cards such as the Dawn Service card, which can only be placed in the first half of the day and only awards points if it is next to another. Go to the Beach allows a player to search the discard deck, taking a card into their hand, and Work allows a player to swap any 2 cards in their timeline. Visit a War Memorial is one of the points-heavy cards of the game, awarding 5 points for just having that card placed. However, it's limited to only 1 per timeline. The last one, though, is a lot heavier, awarding 8 points. However, it counts as 3 cards in the timeline. That is, it counts as all 3 of a player's placements on their turn, and it takes up 3 spaces. After a Gallipoli card is placed, 2 cards should be taken from the draw deck and placed next to it to help visualize its worth. But that is it, guys and gals. Let's head on back to the studio for the review. Alright, first up, a big thank you to Rodney over at Simply Elegant Games for getting in contact and getting a copy of Anzac Day over to us here at Bits so we can really show it off. Truly, I'm always most excited when I have an Aussie game in hand for you guys. Now, I must admit this is the first game from Simply Elegant Games that I've actually had the chance to play, but I gotta say Anzac Day truly lives up to their name. With only a few pages of rules, what we have here is a compelling tableau builder with heart and some solid replayability. Before we get into the gameplay elements though, let me just say that my first few plays of the game have really shown a huge level of respect for the Anzac tradition. To be a winner here, you really have to make use of those real Anzac Day activities, pay respects, and take the time to consider the costs paid to make our countries what they are to this day, except those sentiments are instead displayed in card form. That being said though, those non-traditional activities are really integral for the hand management side of things, so there is a fine balance here, truly. Anyways, let's talk gameplay. To me, the biggest draw here is that choice that a player has to make on their turn. What makes a player choose to play 1, 2, or 3 cards during that play phase? Because this, second to choosing which actual cards are played, is probably the most important consideration in the game. See, placing more cards on a turn will move the game towards end scoring a lot quicker, but there is that cost that you might not actually be playing the best cards that you could be, and you could leave yourself without valuable options come the end game. So do you hurry the game to its end if you think you have the lead, or do you play conservatively to have the best cards for the job? It's a great little puzzle and something really deserving of your attention throughout the game. Remembering here that not all information is known, and you've also got those secret objectives to contend with. Now, I'm always a fan of the public and private objectives split in games because to me, while everyone is playing largely the same game at the table, there is still something unique left to distinguish each player's focus and priority in play. But in this case, I also think that it leads to some very interesting player interaction, although it's not immediately obvious. So you know what people should be going for. You can see the public objectives on the table, but what if you see a player drafting cards that don't match these objectives? Maybe you just gained yourself some insight into that player's hidden objective. And it's worth taking of, because to me, Anzac Day is a kind of a race game. Not completely, but hear me out. It is a race to have the highest quality day that awards the most points. So when a player acts hard going all in, you've only really got a limited time to catch up and do the same. It adds a little pressure and it makes you think about the best ways that you can make the most of what you've got. Because ultimately you really don't want to be the player with less than 12 cards at endgame scoring. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is it pays to know what your opponent is trying to do, why and how you can do your best to fight back. So if you manage to figure out another player's goals, it maybe helps to draw the cards that they want and discard them to take your actions. It's not always going to be the best use of your time, and some cards allow the discard deck to be drawn from, but if it fits with your game, it's probably still worth doing. Saying all that though, the games that I've played have naturally been quite chill and an experience I would call inviting rather than competitive. It's just nice to know that we have options for play later on down the track as players become more familiar with the cards that are available. Luck, as with any card game, plays a fairly important role here. A player could be dealt a hand during setup completely in favour of their private objective, but I've never found that it gets in the way of a good time. And after all, there is a lot of luck mitigation in the draft, and it's not often that no one objective is more powerful than the next. I will say though that there is definitely a pecking order as far as the playable cards are concerned. Some cards are straight up worse choices than others and end up being a discard fuel to pay the main ones, which on the flip can be incredibly powerful, like the Visit the War Memorial or Visit Gallipoli cards. These for me are instant draws during the drafting phase, and because these cards are such a rare occurrence in the deck, it can be tricky to level the playing field, especially Gallipoli, which pushes the game to its end a lot quicker while allowing the player to hold on to a lot more cards, which in turn gives them a lot of extra choice in their future turns. Which brings me finally to the speed of the game. It's quick. Very quick, and it's something you're not going to want to sit down for just one game, which is great because it excuses any imbalance that might occur due to a lucky draw. Generally, you're going to have somewhere between 8 and 12 turns in a game, but with cards like Shopping, you can find the game ends a lot quicker. Definitely well within the 30-minute playtime advertised on the box. Aside from all of that though, it is a familiar design and very easy to learn. It definitely has a nice look, artwork is clean, cards are functional, everything I was hoping to see when I opened the box. Now, for those of you wanting to check this game out, Anzac Day is available on the Game Crafter from the 9th of November Australian time. There should be a link in the description. The game itself has been approved by the Australian Defence Force, and in a show of beautiful generosity, part of the game's profits are actually going to be donated to charities for Australian veterans. Top stuff, Rodney. So that's pretty much it from me today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and do all the things that you guys can do to help this channel grow. But besides that, we are done. So as always, guys and gals, my name's Michael, this is Bits of Board. We'll catch you next time.